and welcome to the Brand Retro Podcast. Today I have artist, hustler, and entrepreneur Ben Olson from Monkeys Aardvark Studios, and also primarily how I found you is through the Chuck Jones Gallery. So Ben, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you, man. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so we'll jump right in here. I wanted to talk with you and have you on the podcast because I saw earlier this month you had done a featured artist, kind of a collab, a webinar with Fabio Napoleoni. And the conversation was not only awesome, but you guys covered so many aspects of not only what you're doing, how you got there, the creative process, entrepreneurship. I had to have you on to kind of talk through some of that because I think it's all applicable to not only artists out there, but creatives in general. So tell me a little bit about how you've meshed the idea of creative and business together.
When I kind of fell into it a bit. I started out in 2008 when I was working for another company. I had a couple of freelance clients and not knowing a whole lot. I didn't really know anything about business other than the fact that you need to invoice somebody for doing work and get paid, right? And then other than that, you got to incorporate. So I started and incorporated Monkeys Aardvark Studios at that time and had a couple of freelance clients. Well, the company I was working for went under and I got laid off. And so I had another client that was like, I need all this stuff. Tell me what it would cost. I gave them an estimate on everything. They cut me a check for half of it, which supported the first 3 months of business. Off we were. And I joined a business association as a creative. As my accountant will tell anybody, creatives and business don't always mesh, right? And so the kind of learned what I didn't know, which was a lot. And joined a business association, got connected with that, met some great people, had some kind of mentorship come from that as well as I moved along. And 13 and a half years later, here we are.
Do you feel like, the reason I ask this, because I feel like our paths are very similar. And like when I grew up, I literally thought, I'm just going to sit around and draw cartoons, draw comics and whatever. And like, that was just where my mind was. It was a very simple time, but that's kind of what I thought. I didn't really understand how it worked. How do you get paid? That it's a job. I just thought, well, I'll just draw pictures for a living and that's going to be awesome. Maybe I'll take care of my parents because I'll be making so much money. I just had this idea that it was going to be so simple. And it wasn't until I started my own business that I started to kind of come back to that mindset and started to realize through networking, through relationships. And yeah, you always have to do the projects you have to do because there are projects that just pay the bills. Mm-hmm. But then there's those other times where you're like, hey, I can work on what I want to work on. I can pick and choose. Sometimes I can just do stuff for fun and see what happens, right? So tell me a little bit about that process for you as you started to kind of go down your own path.
So I was just like you when I was a kid. High school, animation was it. Fine art illustration was my major. Going into college, same thing. I wanted to work for Disney. I wanted to animate down in the Orlando studio. 2 years after I would have graduated, they closed down feature animation in Orlando anyway. So No more traditional animation there. So that would have sucked. But when I got into doing like the freelance thing was weird for me because I did not go to school for design. So I got into a job that I learned design in, taught myself stuff, worked with some other really cool and great creatives in there. And that helped me learn design. Well, when I figured, I'm like, well, I would kind of want to do this for myself. So I joined a business association. I didn't even know what networking was and how you kind of formulate that stuff. I ended up meeting somebody at an after hours event, which is kind of like a networking thing. I showed them a few of the pieces I had designed and they were like, hey, we could use that. Like you got some great design sense. And so I ended up getting hired by a hospital here to do one of their gala things. And that was my first client off this first networking event that I went to. And I'm like, do they all end like this? Do you get a job off all of this? And so I did that project. That led to another project. Then when I got laid off from the company that I was working for, that's when that other opportunity came with a dude who needed all this stuff for across 3 companies. And learning very quickly when you're on your own and you got to hunt it, kill it, clean it, eat it, you better figure stuff out fast and figure out what you're really good at and what you're not good at and what you're not good at. Bring around people that are good at that stuff because you're going to waste so much time, and time is money doing that, it's detrimental. So I got a good attorney, I got a good accountant. We were doing web design and development. I had a fantastic developer that could code anything. And then we were doing print design and stuff too. So it was very much that thing of, here's the bills, here's rent, here's utilities, here's all that stuff. You need to pull in more work. And being a creative with a business mind, I'm not going to say it felt natural once I got into it. It's hard work, period. But it didn't feel odd to me. It wasn't like, I don't like doing believe it or not, even though invoicing gets you money, I don't like doing it.
Right.
I just don't, right? It's the administrative stuff that but I don't mind. Like, I love doing them. I've created a lifestyle for myself and my family where I can provide for my family and do what I love doing. So It was pretty quick on in that first 2 years of cutting my teeth. And it was a lot of relationship building. So I wasn't selling myself. I wasn't handing out my business card saying, this is why you should work with me. This is why you should work with me. I was getting to know other people, and they would see my work, and then I would donate some of my work to organizations to do some stuff because I believed in that, and that would give me exposure. And I would just meet people. And as I got to know them first, the natural way of it comes back around. So what do you do? And I learned very quickly up front. I mean, this comes from my parents and everything else, but always over filling somebody else's cup, right? Don't continue to like suck everything else dry and take everything for yourself. Give to other people, like pour it out. And in doing that, you're not going to lower the amount in your cup. You will actually overflow yourself because there's all those other people that are pouring into you. So it's just this thing that keeps going. And learning that up front helped. I wasn't a pushy guy I'm in a business association. I got shells, dude. I got rings, I got jewelry, I got all the stuff that I wear, right? T-shirts, shorts, flip-flops, whatever. So I dye my hair when I had more hair, like teal and whatever. Getting into that thing and being taken seriously as a professional was awesome, but it was more because of how I was treating other people.
Yeah. And I'm going to have a hard time keeping us on track. I'm going to be honest, because we have a lot of similarities. And just to kind of respond to the things you said, I think being a creative, and I'm sure you heard this throughout your life too, is people want to throw away your ability to be organized, tactical, or whatever, because they want to say, oh, you're a creative mindset, or you're like, they almost want to take that away from you. And I always felt like, well, I'm pretty organized, I think. But I think what it comes down to is when you're forced or backed in a corner and you have to make choices, that when it really, it comes down to brass tacks, we're problem solvers. And whether that problem is accounting, business, not that we like those things, we don't like those things. I don't like those things, but I had to figure it out. So I figured it out, and I actually enjoyed the process of figuring it out my own way, in a creative way that helped grow my business. And the other part is that which I think you did, whether intentional or not, is when I went out networking, I had enough corporate life where I just decided I'm going as I go. I'm going to wear, at the time, cargo shorts. I'm going to wear cargo shorts, baseball hat, and I'm just going to roll the dice. And if they don't want to work with me because of my baseball hat, then it probably wasn't going to happen anyway. So I just went into it with that. And over time, like, I wouldn't call them compliments, but I had people basically acknowledging the fact that, like, we love the authenticity. What we see is what we get. Like, they liked that. And that to me became like, well, it's kind of a no-brainer. It's such an obvious tactic, but it's also just you being you, which is the best part of it, because they know what they're going to get just by looking at that initial package, and then eventually working with you. They're like, yeah, it all matches up. It all lines up. Ben is who we thought he was. That's pretty cool.
The first instance, because I'm 100% with you on that. And the first instance for me that I realized I don't have to look like a suit, right? And not that there's anything wrong with suits, but I'll wear outlandish European shirts with reverse collar stuff. I'll do whatever, right? And I could be myself. Here's how it happened. I had a freelance client, and I went in and I could do these weird, wicked, dimensional paper product designs and all this kind of jazz. And I went in and I pitched them on stuff, and I wore a nice suit. I had no jewelry on, no earrings in, none of that stuff. regular shoes. I went out and I knew the guy, right? I'd met him before, and I talked to him about this and whatnot. And we're just kind of sitting there. That was meeting number one. I leave. It went fine. Come back. And the second time I was, I had been told by the former Mrs. Olson that, you can't dress like that. You can't do this. You need to be more professional. Whatnot. I'm like, you're not getting the vibe. Like, you're in a different world. I'm in another world too. And so the second time I went in, I dressed in jeans. I had whatever shoes I had on. I had the reverse collar stuff, and all my jewelry was on and in. And I went in and I talked this creative process of how we were going to accomplish this, what we could do with it, and then the grand vision of stuff. And I kid you not, after that meeting right there, the guy said this. He goes, I'm going to tell you right now, I knew you were a creative dude. I had heard from reputation. And the first time I met you, it seemed a little, not you, a little stiff, he goes, don't ever change how you dress. There's nothing unprofessional about this at all. He goes, I take you more seriously as a creative, just like you are now, than when you came in with a suit. No joke. That was it. From then on, I was me, and that was fine.
Yeah, and you probably, not that you run the math on it, but you probably close more deals being you than being that alternative version of yourself, whatever that is. Because I remember, so when I was in corporate life, we had to dress, shirt, tie, the whole works. I remember running into coworkers in public and they wouldn't recognize me. And most would make comments like, "Oh, I didn't know you like dressed normal," or "I didn't know," like, and I was like, "Well, that's so weird. Like, do you think I wear a shirt and tie just all the
Right.
time?" Or and then I started thinking about how are we depriving the people around us of our true selves by wearing this? I mean, don't get me wrong. If I could be Batman, secret identity, different, that's cool, right?
Right.
Totally different. But if my secret identity is attempting to be a lame-o with a shirt and tie on, like, that's not a cool alternative ego. So that process and getting that feedback from people just kind of reinforced it, that when I was to start my business or go out on my own, I was like, I don't want to pretend to be somebody else for the sake of business or reputation, or I just don't care enough about those people that would judge me in that way to even bother. And yeah, I mean, I'll go shirt and tie under the right circumstances, church, weddings, whatever it is. But in my day-to-day life business, I dress how I dress. And like you said, I think people appreciate it more because we're just cutting to the chase. There's no mystery anymore.
Well, I was out at, yes, and I agree. And I've been out at numerous. So when I got into business and started to learn this world, I became a member of Vistage. I was working with that, which is like a international organization for business growth. The chamber I was in, I became the chairman, which is at 35, which is hilarious. Teal hair and all, right? And I got taken, like, I would go out to events and I would do things and all this stuff. People would automatically be like, "Oh, so you're in the creative field." I ain't not say anything, right? And I'm like, "Yes, I am." So what do you do? And I didn't even, and I'm talking to them about stuff. They're already making those assumptions, which is good because I'm dressing like that. But I would have more guys in the creative field that would come up to me, especially at like a big convention or something, and I'm dressing like I'm dressing, and they're in the same field I'm in, and they would say, "Man, I wish I could get away with that." And I would tell them to their face, get away with what? Why have to wear a blazer and what? I'm like, do you like, if you like doing that, that's fine. Well, no, I really kind of want to, people would look at me different. And I'm like, what am I dressed as right now? Right. And I was just talking to the CEO of blank, blank, blank company. Yep. You're fine. Just be you, man. The funny part to that is the other side is, when you do dress like that and people make assumptions. When I became the chairman of the business association, we had our breakfast, our January breakfast and all that kind of jazz. And one of my buddies was there and was talking to a couple of ladies, and they had mentioned something or whatever. And he's like, "Well, this is the new chairman." And they're like, "No, it's not." Right? Tealish hair, George. And they're like, "No, it's not." And they didn't believe him. And I'm like, "George, it's okay." We were just talking and whatnot. And I didn't ask him to tell that or introduce me as that, but they were talking about things. So anyway, that goes away. Right? I get up on the podium not more than 10 minutes later, and I begin to give the intro speech of welcoming everybody to the thing. Here's what my reign as chairman kind of is about this year, which is relationships and, blah, 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 the brand of the organization, and then leaving things better than when you found it, and going into the selves. And I gave kind of like a 5 or 6 minute overview on stuff. And then I was done and I passed the mic off. I went down, I sat, we ate. Dude, those two ladies came up to me afterwards. No joke. I am so sorry. It just didn't look like, and then you spoke and you were articulate and eloquent with the thing. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm like,
yeah. Even with a t-shirt on and checkered color Vans, I can talk. I'm not.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're not invalids, like we're not sitting there, it's not like we just are. I say dude a lot. So what, but we're not stringing together stuff that doesn't make sense, or we don't sound unprofessional in what we do. And I think that's the other side to this kind of being and I'm totally comfortable with that. You can think whatever you want, right? But get to know somebody, remove that assumption first. It was probably the most hilarious interaction I've had with somebody who sat there and then didn't take me seriously at all. And I was in a position of authority. And then when I went up, and it wasn't proclamating myself, I was saying, here's what we're going to do this year. Here's what I believe for the organization. And very much made it about other people. And then when I was done, to the shock and not dismay, but to the shock and awe of the individuals, so much so that they apologized to me afterwards, like a lot. And I'm like, it's okay, you're fine, it's okay.
Yeah. Well, I can promise you, I'll try to get us back on track, but I want to stay on this topic, because what you're reminding me of is my own process of, I feel more creative when I am wearing my stuff. And yeah. I'm a sneakerhead. So 99% of the time, you're going to see me wearing retro Jordans, probably 1, 2s, or 3s, possibly 4s. But I get comments about them all the time where people are like, hey, what are you, 15? I'm like, yeah, I don't know. Like, if I was 15, I'd be high-fiving myself, because these Jordans are awesome. Right. And when I wear them, when I surround myself with that stuff that inspires me, I'm putting out way better work.
Oh, yeah.
So it's all part of the package. It's all part of the creative process. And it's not necessarily about, what t-shirt you have on. It's about the comfort. Like, that's the part I think they miss sometimes when you get those. I know they don't mean to hurt your feelings, but when you get those criticisms, it's kind of like, how much more creative would you be in your job, whether it's realty or insurance, whatever it is. But if you actually came packing the stuff that makes you happy, like, how much better would you be at your job? That's what we're doing here.
Well, I think it goes to the statements that you made, and, the whole idea of brand, right? And that's your personal brand. This is my personal brand. And you're known for that. I'm known for that. And I can go out in my community. There's an expectation, that had developed over the years of like, well, that's Ben. And that's if I were to be any different, that wasn't me, the show. And there's no point to that. So it's thank you, honey. Just kind of went through, and I'm like, I've built my personal brand around that. And I golf barefoot. I know I don't golf a lot, right? But when I go barefoot at our business outings. And it's just a thing, right? So to your point, yeah, dude, if I was 15 and wearing myself, because I'd be like, I can afford those when I'm older.
I don't want to sidetrack us here, but I have a pretty massive Jordan collection. And yeah, 10-year-old Mike would be flipping out if he could know what was coming. So, because, when you're living during that time, they were tough to come by and they were expensive and all these things. And now, like, if I called myself in a time machine and said, hey, dude.
Yes.
Yeah.
I can wait for that.
I can't wait to be in my 40s is what I'd be saying. So you talked a little bit about filling your cup, and I actually read a book back in the day called Fill Your Cup, and it talks about, I don't know if you've ever read that one, but it's about filling other people's cups versus detracting from it. And it's about positivity, optimism, those kinds of things. Mm-hmm. And one of the quotes, I think it's in the book, but it's always a quote I remembered, is talking about all ships rise with the tide. And when I started my business, that was one of the big things. And it's something that came out of that interview with that you did with the Chuck Jones Gallery, is how you put those efforts out there to help other people. And sometimes, there might be a slight business connection as to why you do it or don't do it. But a lot of the times it's just in good faith that if I put that out there, it'll come back at me.
So I'd get asked to join a board of a small nonprofit because they needed help rebranding. So that was my serving as board member, was to rebrand that organization. And then here you go, design whatever. Now everybody can ask for everything. So you have to sift through it. And I had to really make it a point to say, what do I believe in? How can I help that? And right, I'm being led in ways, right? So it's very much a faith-based thing. Like, all right, Lord, where are we going with this? And sometimes things would pop in and would be like, and that's an opportunity. All right. And I could feel that that's what I should be doing that. It's not hindering from anything else. Whether or not I get business from it, I'll tell you right now, the vast majority of the giving I've done, either financially through the studio or especially design and donating work, has not reciprocated in financial dollars. And I'm okay with that because I wasn't going into it thinking, what am I going to get out of it? Right. It was strictly like, I see the need.
Yep.
I understand the need. The wheel's already spinning inside. I get it. I get what this is. Okay. I can help. And here's what I can do. And then I would set parameters because you have to, it can get wildly out of control and it can consume way more time than it needs to. And you got to be careful with that in stewarding your time. So I would set parameters around it and be like, this is what I can give. This is how much time I can spend on it. And then let's do that. And I would do that thing. And so, but it was very much feeling like as an opportunity would present itself, does it fit with me and what I'm about? And if yes, and I can do something, okay, here is what we can do. And then I'm going to execute. And I would treat it the same exact way as a paying client, right? You either put it all in, you don't do it at all. So there is no half effort. There is no like, I'll throw you a little whatever and you give them the cheap stuff. No, everything must be done with integrity. So that's kind of how that formulates.
Yeah. So I have a similar process in that I just know when I know, like if I feel like a project's a good fit or if hey, that is something I want to be involved in. I go into it, no strings attached, because I just know that that's going to muddy things up, but also that's not why we do it. But what I've seen the ROI be is that it creates good content because people want to hear about the story. Like, tell me how you got to point A to point B. Or I've seen other doors open, not necessarily that, again, that maybe turned into anything or turned into any kind of financial benefit, but it opened a door to either make a new connection, to maybe meet a new person that's super cool. But I've just seen it grow my business in probably every other way but financial. But I've seen it grow my business in all those other networking, just kind of optimistic ways. And for me, like I get asked, like, why do you do that stuff? Doesn't that cost you money? Doesn't it? I suppose it costs me time. It costs me a little money here and there, but if I'm going to give time away or if I'm going to invest myself in something, I'd like it to fit my brand, but I'd also like to be able to choose where I want to do it. And by doing that, doors opening, those kinds of things just show up down the road. And it's a leap of faith. But once you kind of do it and kind of feel like it works, it's just something you want to do because you're giving something back.
So to get to your, to just briefly on the filling of other cups thing, I agree with you that
awesome.
The intangible effect of doing that is knowing that you should do it, then doing it. And then maybe it's a connection, maybe it's whatever, I never went in with an expectation of what am I going to get out of this, right? Like, oh, even if people were promising me stuff like, oh, well, this, this, I'm like, no, I get it. Right. I'm going to do this knowing that even if nothing happens, I have to be okay with it. And if I can go into it knowing that if I get nothing out of this, I'm fine because I wanted to do this. I know that's the right way I need to go.
No, that's exactly the way we've approached it as well. And what I like about it is it creates no barriers. It's just a gift. It's a philanthropy. It's because that's the part I don't like mixing the two. So like I've done scenarios where I try to donate time, resources, those kinds of things, and they're adamant about wanting to
Right.
attach it to something. And I'm like, I don't want, like, I don't, if you want to bake me some cookies
Right.
afterwards,
Yeah.
fine.
It's been
But
a,
so I'm gonna transition us into a kind of an observation that I made, not only looking at your artwork, but watching your interview on the Chuck Jones Facebook page and whatnot. When I was a kid, I loved drawing cartoons, those kinds of things, but I also love the
yeah.
mashup concept. I love drawing like Gremlins or ET wearing Michael Jackson clothing. Like I love mashing those things up. And I don't even know that I knew what I was doing, but I did that. And that was kind of my process. That's always one of the things I loved about the Chuck Jones work is when he would mash up, a Robin Hood with a Daffy Duck, or, he would take these at the time, I guess they would
Mm-hmm.
be considered pop culture, but he would grab these influences and mash them up with his characters and his artwork. Talk to me a little bit about how you've been able to pull inspiration and personal interest into what you do. I think you're further down the road than I am.
I got into Rilling School of Art and Design, which was awesome. That was my number one school of choice. Couldn't afford the tuition. Went to a community college. Spent 4 years on a 2-year degree that I never graduated from, and then drawing still. But then going away from drawing. Not that I would. I do it a little bit here and there. I was photography for Auto Trader. I was designing whatever to get. There was a big vacuum of space of not creating like I'm doing now. And it was something that I felt like I knew I was good enough to get into a really good school, and then I didn't do anything else with it. I didn't grow. And like, man, how much farther would I be now? Well, forget that. I'm here. So I'd say like 7 years ago when I met Craig, and in 2008, we were chit-chatting about stuff. He invited me out to Chuck's 100th birthday gala bash for the Jones Family Gathering in 2012. And I got involved in their Red Dot thing, which was donating a canvas of artwork to raise money for the thing. Well, by the second year, I'd had this idea, or third year maybe, I'd had this idea. And so I'm like, man, I want to get back into that love that I've had of fine art and illustration. Now, design pays the bills, right? Which is awesome. And I get to illustrate with this stuff too. So that never went away, but it wasn't this, right? It wasn't. And to take the opportunity after I did that to be like, to present something and be like, I don't know what your guys' process is for selecting artists. This is here's a piece that's a stripy pop art style. And they're like, all right, that's cool. Some talking, we'll sign you and let's see what happens. Awesome. So then I get to play with Looney Tunes characters, which I grew up with. And if you watch, from that interview, Chuck Jones, Chuck Amuck autobiography was one of the first books I had checked out of the library as a freshman. And I was, drawing stuff from there. And this was the guy that created all the stuff that I loved when I was a kid and still love now and think it's hilarious. So I got into that, and I did some artwork, and I would do some pieces, and I would practice a little more, and that was great. And I was, sold a few things, and that was cool. And it didn't really hit until last year. So COVID, being what it is a blessing in many ways also, which is kind of odd to say, or it may seem odd to hear, but everything happens for a reason. So I don't believe in coincidence. And I don't believe in chance and luck. I believe everything happens for a reason. And my design agency business just got raked because everybody that was branding for events and trade shows and all this other stuff, guess what? Whoop, gone. So I had no new projects for the rest of the year starting in April. Everything got killed. This had an opportunity. We tried this thing out on this Zoom thing, and I created like 2 new pieces for it, which was a Robin Hood Daffy piece and a Dino. And we did this show. We tried it out, sold a few more pieces, and then did another show, which is where I met Fabio for the first time. That was our speed dating 20 minutes before a 2-hour interview. Through this last year, I have created more fine art, illustration, pop art, whatever, than I have probably. Now, I said for the gallery more than I have in the first, like this last year, than the first 6 years. In total, I guarantee you more than I have since I left high school, or I should say college, since I left college. That's nuts in a year. And I feel at the age of now 42 that I'm just starting. And it's cool because I didn't lose it. Like I didn't lose it. Did I lose it? No, I still got it. Now, I think I'm good, but I'm not great. And I
Yeah.
want to be great, but I'll never get to great, because if I ever get to that, where you go from there? And there's always somebody better. So it's that constant evolution as an artist, knowing that you must continue to work on your craft. And so that's where this all came from. And man, and they let me go to town on it. I just submitted concepts for something that I can't even mention yet. But something that comes out in a couple of weeks, and put the 2 and 2 together on that right now. It depends on when you're watching this. And if they get approved, I have a very limited time to put it together. But they're like, yeah, play with this property. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, just the idea of, I think as an artist, when I was young, you kind of thought like, well, I would have to either outdo Chuck
Right.
Jones, or I would have to outdo Walt Disney. I don't know that I understood that I would get to play with his property, which is super cool. So to be able to take that, put your own spin on it, and kind of mash it up with other things, I mean, that's just got to be mind blowing, even at this age, to be like, that is so cool, because who knew? I'm like you, where when I first started my career, I was a
Yep.
graphic artist, illustrator, and I did cartooning and stuff. But I took a long hiatus away from the pencil, and I was just designing whatever I
Oh
was
yeah.
designing. And I didn't not like it, but I kind of forgot how much I liked to do the other stuff. So now that I started my own business, now it's like I got to get back to that, and I have to pull in as much of that stuff as I possibly can. And that's what's gotten me connected to, doing stuff within the comic book industry and helping artists, build out kind of e-commerce platforms for their artwork. And it's I'm taking kind of a long way around to
Well,
get back to
and
my center.
same, like my project list. This is what I had to write out this morning. That I have to get going. I'm sure you got. Yeah, there you go. Yes, the tangible list. Nothing beats it. Forget the apps. I tried them. I have to write it down. And I treat. What's been great about this is, I have my own personal stuff. So I have like 3 Monkeys Aardvark Studios, and I have the Backyard Experience, because I started my own nonprofit that's been up and running. We're back into events again, and Comic-Con C2E2 out here. We're back at C2E2. We're going to the Windy City Bulls. We're within the NBA G League. We're in minor league baseball. And so that's great. And then the art of Ben Olson, which is the bionic squirrel thing, and that doing that. But what I had to do, so going back to 17-year-old Ben in high school,
Yep.
wanting to animate as he's getting out of high school and going into college, I would say what I really appreciate about going through the design aspect of things, right? And having so much to do with that. And as you know, when we're pitching clients or we're presenting ideas, we are given the reasons behind it. We've got whatever data that we've collected from the briefs, all the other stuff that's going in, and like, here's the reason. And it's really this first. And I didn't know that when I was younger. And I don't know if I would have, and I don't even care, because that didn't happen. This is the path. I honestly don't think I would have developed this tool like I did, which is the most important creative tool. And this, or whatever this is, how I get it out. So to now come 20 years later and to be able to do pieces with Cody and whoever else, I just killed the call. We'll call them back later. It pops up on their iPads too when my phone rings. So, to look at it now and to attach meaning, to this kind of stuff and be like, here's the story, here's what I'm like to do with it, blah, blah, blah. I don't think I would have been as astute going the other route as I am going through the design route and coming to it now, because after so many pitches and still doing, I've got reasons. And when I pitch my concepts, come at it now and have a better process, and then understand that every single one of these is a project. Like, I am a client of myself. I'm a client of Chuck Jones Gallery. I have a deadline, by the way, Friday. So in 5 days, there are 2 pieces that need to be finished, period. All right, so here's how I'm going to schedule that stuff out amidst the other things. I don't believe I would have thought that way if I wouldn't have gone through what I did now. So to be in my early 40s, running my own shop, doing all this stuff, I think this right now, that's the culmination. Like, I'm in it and it's throttled down.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think that if I would have stayed drawing, doing the things I was doing at 20, 21, I don't think I'd necessarily be in the same place, because that hiatus gave me the education of everything else. It gave me the business. It gave me all the other missing pieces.
And Fabio and I were talking about this on the first interview we did about just putting the work in. And there's so many artists, creatives, whatever, that don't have that. Like, it's discipline. And let's just be honest with it. It's not our strong suit. Starting things, we are great at starting things. Finishing, no, right? So to have that thing and to be able to have the motivation behind it to get it done. When for instance, if I want to be an artist and I want to make money as a designer and a fine artist, well, then I got to make sure that I'm putting myself out there as a fine artist as well. And specifically with the Chuck Jones Gallery, I'm cranking out pieces regularly. I'm not taking a hiatus from stuff. I've got concepts. I send concepts. All right, 7 were approved. Okay, it might take me a few months to crank through those, but discipline to not be a starving artist and understand that, like, I make money design, but I also want to make money doing this. This isn't a hobby. This is a thing I'm making money at. So I know how much I make per painting. I know how fast I can produce stuff. I know that I need to constantly have concepts in the pipeline approved. And then when an opportunity comes in, like this thing that in 2 days, I whipped out concepts for, and I sent in, and I said, okay, here's my 4 or 5 concepts. And they're like, awesome, we'll get back to you. Okay, now if I get those approved, I've got 2 weeks to finish that. Okay, and then it releases because it's very timely, and go. So if I don't have that mindset with things, and if I'm like, oh, well, when I feel inspired, then I'll do something, and there's so many creatives that are like that, and then expect this giant $20,000 payday on a piece. And I'm like, you're out of your freaking mind, man. This is work. Like, this is work. You either put the work in, right, and discipline yourself to do that, or you're going to be in your parents' basement till you're 80.
Yeah. And I think I'm like you in that. I'm guessing you're like this, but I have more ideas than I have time.
Yes.
So if I'm not productive, or if I'm not attacking the ideas, I'm not getting anywhere, because I'll never get to the long list of stuff that I'm constantly coming up with. And it's not only the stuff I want to do today, it's the stuff I want to do tomorrow and next week and a month from now. And I've even found myself, because right now we're primarily logo, brand development, websites, that kind of stuff. I've even found stuff that I feel like I just want to see it get done, but it doesn't have to be by my hand. I'll just delegate it to one of my artists and be like, I just want to see this thing come to life. Here's my thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
So I switch hats from artist to art director, and I let them do it. And I get just as much out of it watching them interpret what I give them and bring it to life. I'm like, sweet, check that one off the list. On to the next one.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, you got to put the work in. And like, I'm dealing more with like brand creative graphic artists. They all want to get to the finish line. They all want to get to the part where they have their own agency, or they're a freelancer, or they just want to have that freedom. And I'm like, you got to go through all of this first. And then along that path, you got to work your
I think that
off.
Like, I had wanted to have my own studio when I was younger. I didn't know what that meant, though, right? And I think a lot of what I find, especially when I've hired and I've had bigger teams in-house to do things, the younger crowd specifically has this, well, this is where they want what I have already. And I'm like, do you understand that I'm 15 years ahead of you? And I'm still putting in the work. It doesn't stop. I'm not just like, and you all do it. No, like, I'm in it. And so I think there's a misconception, as to like, I just want to do this, until you actually get to it. And you literally have to go find the work, do the work, build the work, support the work, and everything else. Hunt it, kill it, clean it, eat it, the whole thing. And I found more, not everybody's built for that, and that's okay, right? But I found more young creatives that had the misconception of that went out to it. And instead of having that mindset of like hammer down and figure it out and do that kind of stuff, it just collapses them.
Yep. I have an intern this summer, and I've kind of given him that same education, but also told him you have to find your angle or your niche with it. Cause that's the other thing. Like, I could get Ben's playbook and replicate it to a T, but that doesn't make me Ben, because Ben's got his own thing. Now, if you can replicate Ben's thing, go ahead, but it's probably your own thing that's going to make whatever it is, if it's your style, if it's your personal brand, whatever that extra ingredient is, that's the
Yes.
juice that makes it all kind of work. And for young artists, for anybody in the creative space, like you got to find your
Or
secret
yeah,
ingredient. What is that? And
no.
yeah, and don't be afraid to throw that in your work, because it maybe doesn't stand out the first 2, 3, 10 times you do
Mhm.
it, but over time
I found
you'll
they
you'll
spend
hone it.
more
You'll start to
time
develop it. Yeah.
designing their signature than
Yeah.
they do putting the effort into the
Yeah.
piece. And I'm like, what on
I've
earth?
seen
Like,
that.
you can have whatever piece you want and you got this cool signature. Who the heck cares? What the heck is that you just did? Can you explain that? Well, no, but I spent like half my time on the signature, and I'm like, you're putting your efforts in the wrong place.
Yeah, because that's not going to get you the home run. It's
Yes.
the focus or the
Yes.
piece of artwork that you're working on that's going to get you the home run. All right, so to transition to close here, I want to hear more about what you're doing with the Chuck Jones Gallery, and then currently just what you're up to. I know you've got a ton of things in motion, ton of things going on all the time. You're doing art drops.
Backyard Experience Side, which is my nonprofit that has the Chuck Jones Center for Creativity Chicagoland. We just did our big draw at the Schaumburg Boomer Stadium. So I just designed Bugs Bunny and Elmer Fudd jerseys for each team. Home team was Bugs, away team was Elmer. And then we had creativity stations around the ballpark that kids and adults could participate in. I've got an art drop every month kind of happening. I'm going to do one that's a road rally, which is a half day thing. I'm going to hide art all over the city. And then I'm going to have this as home base. We got Disney fine art, and we have Chuck Jones Gallery fine art on the other side. Money, everything that we sell from that, we get a portion of that goes to the foundation, like 40%, which is awesome. So that's that. We've got Comic-Con coming up in December, and then we've got the Windy City Bulls back in January. So that's the backyard side with all that. And then I do mentorships. The fine art side in the art, I've had a blast with art drops because a fellow lover of mashups, like I'll mash up all kinds of stuff, and I've got like one with like a,
Yeah.
what did I do? When I did the 12 art drops of Christmas, and how that all came about was I've heard of art drops going around on like East Coast, West Coast, right? And friends of mine that have done it. And especially last year, because it was difficult for most people, I did one art drop in November. I didn't even know if anybody would care. Was going to care, right? I did this little Grogu with the little eggs, and I hid it at my buddy's restaurant. And the point was, I wanted to do something fun. I wanted to highlight, because they locked down restaurants here again. And I got a lot of friends who own restaurants. Nobody could figure out why that was happening. And so that was a detrimental thing. So you couldn't dine in sort of anymore. And so I wanted to highlight his restaurant. So I hid it there before they opened. And a friend of mine like posted on Facebook and Instagram, and it was gone in like 45 minutes. Like somebody like ran out of their house, threw their kids in the minivan. A friend of mine did, and she ran over there and grabbed it. And it's just a 9x12. I do all my art drops on 9x12 paper. And I'm like, that was fun. So, and it highlighted my buddy's restaurant. And then it pushes me also. So, as I'm working with all this stuff and Looney Tunes and whatever, but it also pushes me, the Chuck quote of "You've got 100,000 bad drawings in you, so get them out as fast as possible." Oh, I'm still well into my 100,000, right? And so this is an opportunity for me to like, am I good? Am I good? Like, can I do this? And can I? And I'm not going to give up. So I'm just going to draw it until I get it right. And then how fast can I get it right? How fast can I do it? So I'm checking my speed, I'm checking my talent, all that other kind of stuff. And overall, the main theme is I just want other people to get some kind of thrill out of this. So then I came up, I'm like, I'm going to do the 12 art drops at Christmas. And I'm going to do two drawings in one drop every day from the 12th through the 24th or whatever that was. And it went gangbusters. And so I would do it online. I would do a few online. I did a lot in person. And the longest one waited was 50 minutes. And then I started like halfway through recording once I dropped, because they were going so fast. And like you'd hear tires screeching. One woman stole a car. That was a whole thing. And it was, the clue was drive it like you stole it. What it meant was the drawing is in my buddy's van with his logo on it at the place that I said, here it is. She took some other guy's car down the street and drove it up and be like, I stole it. And I'm like, you're going to want to put that back. Oh, dude, it was hilarious. What came out of that was the idea was you in the art drop, you keep one and then you have to gift one to somebody else. So you don't get to keep both. And I want you felt happy and a thrill doing this. I want you to treat somebody else. And that went over huge. And I did some online. I did one for of like a Jack Skellington and the Grinch, and then I mashed up some Star Wars in there. And I just had a blast with it. People loved it. I wanted to produce something, not just like some dumb little drawing, I didn't half it. I went full in every time and made sure this was a small piece of art. Here you go. And then that led to the 12 of 21, which was one a month, and then the road rally. So the art drops have been a blast. I've thoroughly enjoyed seeing people's reactions to stuff and then just the joy that they've got. So I'm going to keep that going. But that's led to other stuff. So it's led to some commission work on some things. It's led to, other ideas on things I could pull off. And which is how I got into the whole, how I started expanding my steampunk empire with Marvin the Martian, which is just insane.
I hate even using the phrase, but it's the ROI we talked about before, where you go into it with zero strings attached and no intention to monetize. But you do it and good things happen, just whether it's opportunities or relationships or whatever it is. And people love that stuff. If they're a fan of your work and they're following you, just to get a little something that's personal to them.
Well, and so to keep that going, and then I'm cranking hardcore. So there's 3 paintings that have to get finished. One sold with, I don't even know where it is. It's over here. One sold with barely anything done on it. And I was like, okay, that has to get done by the end of this week. There's a lot more done on it now. But the Chuck Jones stuff is continuing to pump out concept after concept and then produce the work to get it going. And I have no intention of letting off the throttle. So there's other little things, that I'm working on because I want to go after one more IP, and that has something to do with a galaxy far, far away. But
yeah, this is the last question. I'll let you go. But on that vein, I remember a time in my career where I don't know that I ever didn't want people to succeed, but I remember a competitive phase where I was competitive and I wanted to kind of be the best and I wanted to be at the same level or better than everybody around me. But then there was a tipping point where I was like, I can just appreciate what other people are doing and not necessarily, I might sometimes go, God, I wish I'd have thought of that, or I got to get better at this X, Y, and Z, but I can really look at what other people are doing and just celebrate the hell out of it, because I can't possibly do it all. And I know that people have their own styles, their niches. Yeah, I can just look at what other people are doing and just find joy in the fact that that guy is killing it doing what he's doing, whether it's the Star Wars Photoshop things or what you're doing. But I think turning that corner or that tipping point in my career, it opened my eyes up to find inspiration in other places.
Well, and I
competitive
take a slight twist to that, and I'm still competitive when I look at other stuff, because, and it's not like, can I be better than that person? I'm not, I look at it and I look at something that's done that's really great and I soak in that impact and I celebrate that. And the competitive edge to me kicks in with, it motivates me to be like, are you doing everything you can be doing as good as you're doing it? And to my own style, like it's my, and I'm like, are you, and so the competitiveness is more of like, are you playing at the same level that person is? That doesn't mean that I can recreate their stuff. It just means that am I achieving my maximum potential? And if I'm not, that's the competitive edge that keeps it going.
That's the same for me. And it comes back to the list, because that guy had that on his list for probably a couple of years, and he just never got to it because he was weed whacking or going out with his wife or whatever he was doing. And when he finally attacked that one on his list, that's when it blew up. And that's what I always think about from a competitive nature. Yeah. Like, I got to get to the list because that thing is on
that's
the list. I just have to make sure.
And I'm not comparing his Star Wars World War II stuff to Steampunk Marvin, but that to me, like seeing that kind of stuff, that's the competitive thing that spurred more of the Steampunk Marvin thing, which continues to do really well. And then Chuck Jones Gallery let me I pitched them a 35 piece like composition of like and here's what I want to do. And they're like, it's crazy. All right, go ahead and try it. You look at a guy who did like Star Wars World War II stuff, and then I've had this thing sitting there and I've written it down, and all the planets have stuff, whatever. And I just need to put more time into it. Well, now I am, and it's a viable product for them. And now and I'm moving forward. So can now, instead of just writing it on my list, check off planet A and check off planet B. But it's been that thing that's been sitting there for several years, and it hasn't done, like, I haven't done anything with it because other stuff's going on, and I'm finally attacking that. And that's that's that spur to do it. Just do it.
Yeah. And the juice you're going to get from that is going to give you enough energy and enough motivation to do the next 10, next 20, whatever it is. Yeah. All right, dude, I'm going to let you go. I could talk to you for hours here. And if you're open to it, I might even ask you to come back on, because I think we didn't talk about Michael Jordan. We didn't talk about
I'm in for another
we have a lot to
round, dude, because you and I probably we did grow up around the same time. And I had, when starting in 92, when things were rocking, 93, 94, find 95 in 94, but the number 45, when that comes back, and then you get into 96, 97, 98, dude, I don't know about you, but I was lined up at the pop-up merchandise stores after they won. I was watching the games. We spray painted the Bulls logo on our Sandlot basketball court. I had the cheap Michael Jordan jersey, not the cloth one, with the cloth letters. I had the screen printed letters. Oh, I still have that. Anyway, yes, there's more to talk about.
Yeah, let's do that, because Michael Jordan could be its own episode, really, because I'm a Jordan freak, and long story, but I'm going to let you go. Thank you for coming on. I totally appreciate it. Love the artwork, and I honestly can't wait to see what you're going to be unrolling and kind of making aware to the public here in the next few months.
All right, take care, man. You too.
Awesome.